Hello chess enthusiasts, my name is Miha and welcome to my chessrealm YouTube channel. You have probably been following this American Cup which recently ended in St. Louis. The game schedule was a bit complex because 8 players competed in a knockout system. Each pair played 2 classical and 2 rapid games, and those players who got knocked out later went to loser bracket playing with the other losers, but in the end winner of the losers bracket played with the winner of the winners bracket. Levon Aronian won, by the way, that grand finale. So anyway, in the quarterfinals of the losers bracket, there was a duel between Sevian and Wesley. So in the second game, Sevian had white pieces and he started with e4, e5, knight to f3, knight to c6, bishop to c4, knight to f6, d3, bishop to c5, now c3, and we have classical variation of Italian's game. Black castles king side, and white does the same. And black continues with d6, rook goes to e1, both sides continue with the natural development, and black plays a5, h3, bishop to e6, and now bishop to b5, also pretty much standard moves, and now bishop goes back to a7, knight from b goes to d2, and now we have some redeployment of the knights. Knight goes to e7, knight goes to f1, knight to g6, and knight to g3, and black plays now c6, driving the bishop away, also preparing to strike the center. White plays bishop to a4, and black indeed strikes the center. d5 was played, e-pawn captures on d5, knight recaptures on d5, and now white also strikes the center. d4 was played, e-pawn captures on d4, knight recaptures on d4, and now queen to c7. And here white spots the opportunity, knight to f5 was played. You might think that white wants to connect the knights. Well, white prepared a very nice trick. If black, for example, plays a random move, let's say rook to b8, then knight captures on g7. If king recaptures on g7, then rook captures on e6, and white is a pawn up. Why? Well, black cannot capture on e6 because knight recaptures on e6, forking both king and the queen, and white gains decisive material advantage. Okay, so rook from a goes to e8, reinforcing bishop on e6. White continues with bishop to b3, and now bishop goes to d7, offering the trade of rooks. Well, maybe white should consider this rook trade. After, let's say, rook captures on e8, rook recaptures on e8. Here on f8, there wouldn't be any rook supporting this f-pawn in advancing. You will see later why is that important. Well, this position here is tricky. If white plays a random move, let's say a3, then rook captures on e1, queen recaptures on e1, rook to e8, driving the queen out of the e file. After, let's say, queen to d1, then simply bishop captures knight on f5, knight recaptures on f5, and then queen to e5, attacking the knight. Well, knight has a few options, but knight cannot go to g3 because queen captures on g3, f-pawn is pinned and cannot recapture. And after knight goes to e3, then simply knight captures on e3, bishop captures on e3, bishop captures on e3, f-pawn captures on e3, and queen captures on e3. Black is a pawn up in a much better position. And after knight to d4, then simply queen captures on e1, queen to e1, rook to e1, check, of course, king goes to h2. And now bishop captures on d4, c-pawn recaptures on d4, and then knight goes to f4, preparing knight to e2, attacking the bishop. Bishop is pinned, and black gains decisive material advantage. Okay, so in the game, bishop captures on d5, c-pawn recaptures on d5, knight goes to g3, rook captures on e1, check, queen recaptures on e1, and now f5, preparing f4, driving the knight away. So white plays knight from g goes to e2 immediately, and now black plays f4, preparing f3. That would be very unpleasant. If white allows f3, after, let's say, a random move a3, then f3, both knight and pawn on g2 are attacked. White can, of course, capture with g-pawn or not. Let's see, if g-pawn captures on f3, then bishop captures on h3. With king in the open, black has decisive advantage. I cannot go through all the variations, but black is winning here. After, let's say, knight goes to g3, then f-pawn captures on g2, king recaptures on g2, and bishop captures on d4, removing the defender of this f3 square. And then after c-pawn captures on d4, knight to h4, check, king cannot go to g1 or h2 because knight to f3 forks both king and the queen. So king would have to go to h1, and then bishop simply captures on h3. Bishop to g2 is coming, forcing white king to go to h2 or g1, and then knight to f3 is decisive. Okay, so in the game, knight to f3 was played, blocking this f-pawn temporarily. Black plays knight to e5, trying to drive the knight away. And now knight from e goes to d4, reinforcing the knight on f3. But now bishop captures knight on d4. White has two options of capturing, but of course white cannot capture with c-pawn. After c-pawn captures on d4, then knight captures on f3, g-pawn captures on f3, and queen to c2, preparing queen to g6 with a deadly attack on the king. Again, I cannot go through all the variations, but black is winning here. So in the game, knight captures on d4 was played, and now finally f3. White doesn't want to break up his pawn structure around his king, so g3 was played. Black can capture this pawn on h3 naturally, but if bishop captures on h3, then bishop to f4, pinning the knight on e5, who is twice attacked. Yeah, black can defend with rook to e8, but then queen to d2 equalizes the game. So in the game, queen to d6 was played. Now bishop to f4 doesn't work anymore. After bishop to f4, rook captures on f4, g-pawn captures on f4, queen to g6. It's gonna be mate on g2 no matter what white does. In the game, b3 was played, preparing bishop to a3. If black plays a random move, let's say king to h8, then bishop to a3, skewering the queen, literally forcing black to play queen captures on a3 and then queen captures on e5, and the position is approximately equal. So in the game, knight goes to c6 was played. Knight captures on c6, b-pawn captures on c6, and now queen to f1, defending this pawn on h3. Queen goes to e5, attacking pawn on c3, so bishop to d2 defending. Queen goes to h5, double attack on this pawn on h3. And here white should defend with king to h2. But white saw the things otherwise. h4 was played. Rook goes to e8, And here it was necessary for white to play rook to e1, counteracting on the e file. After rook to e1, yeah, then black can play rook to e2, attacking the bishop. Here white has to capture rook because h3 is also the threat. So after rook captures on e2, f-pawn recaptures on e2, queen to g2. Yeah, black has the initiative and a slight advantage, but white can hold this e1 square at the position somehow. In the game, bishop to e3 was played, and black responded with rook to e4, and it is a very dangerous move. Black is preparing rook to h4, later with queen captures on h4, with mating threats, and here it was necessary for white to play queen to d3. After queen to d3, if rook captures on h4, g-pawn captures on h4, queen captures on h4, preparing queen to h3. After another random move, let's say a3, then queen to h3, queen to f1, preventing mate on g2, queen to g4 check, king to h2, queen to h4 check, king to g1, and bishop to h3. And mate in a couple of moves is unavoidable. So here after queen to h4, bishop to f4 offers white some defense. White can block check with bishop to g3. So here black would probably capture bishop on f4 with queen. So for an exchange, black has two pawns and is better, if not winning. White would have a very difficult job to try to secure the draw. Still, maybe he could try to do it. Anyway, in the game, rook to d1 was played. Rook to d4 is coming, defending this pawn on h4, but black is on the move and plays rook to h4 immediately. Well, white has to capture, or there is mate on h1. So g-pawn captures on h4, queen recaptures on... queen goes to g4 check, king goes to h2, queen to h4 check, king goes to g1, bishop to h3, attacking the queen, rook to d4, counter-attacking on the black queen, but now queen goes to h5. Queen of f1 is still under attack, and queen to g6 is gonna be made on g2. So queen to d3 was played, preventing queen to g6, but now bishop goes to g2. It's gonna be mate on h1 no matter what white does, and realizing that all is lost in this position, Samuel Sevian resigned the game. So I hope you like this game, I hope you have learned something from it. If you have any questions, my email is below in the description. Of course, I invite you to visit my Instagram page. That's it for now, and see you soon.